So today we're going to read a passage that is one of my favorite passages in the Bible. It's called Elijah and the Prophets of Baal, and it's in 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 20 to 40. And basically, this story takes place in a really difficult time in Israel's history. So if you look at the Bible, it's divided up into two parts. There's the Old Testament, which goes over the history of Israel. So we learn about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Well, first we learn about creation, Adam and Eve, Noah, and then we learn about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the whole nation of Israel. And that's where we have a lot of our amazing Old Testament Bible stories. And then we have the New Testament, which has the coming of Christ, which has the coming of Jesus. Now, in this particular book, it's a really hard time in Israel's history because they have a very bad king. What happened was they did have some really good kings, like we learned about King David, we learned about his son Solomon, and there was a series of good kings. There's one king named King Ahab who really disobeyed God. He had a wife named Jezebel, and he and his wife were against God, and they didn't want the Israelites to worship God anymore. They wanted their people to worship a different god named Baal. Now, Elijah is one of the few prophets that are left because King Ahab got rid of all the prophets of God. And Elijah and the prophets of Baal have a showdown. And basically, what Elijah says is they go up to an altar, and the contest is whichever God can light up the burnt offering is the one true God. And there were 450 prophets of Baal. There was only one prophet of God left. And Elijah said, I believe my God is the real God, and you believe your God is a real God. So in front of the entire nation of Israel, let's have the showdown. So King Ahab and all the prophets of Baal, they start, dancing and doing all these rituals. And Elijah starts mocking them, and he says, maybe your God is on vacation. Maybe he's sick. Maybe he can't hear you. Maybe he's taking a nap. But as we know, the offering does not get burnt. Now, Elijah calls for 4 jugs of water. So they create a little trench, and the offering is drenched in water. And then he prays to God, and God sends down fire from heaven, and the burnt offering is burned. And everyone sees that Elijah's God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is the one true God. So we know a lot of the really popular stories of the Bible. I'm sure you've heard the story of Moses splitting the Red Sea, and there are so many. But this is one story that a lot of people overlook. This is an amazing story. And what ends up happening is the people of Israel see that God is the one true God. And they were currently going through famine at this time, and then we see that God sends rain. So I really like this story because one of the things that I find myself having to face a lot as a Christian and as someone who believes in God is that you will encounter a lot of people that don't believe in God and that don't quite understand you or understand why you think the way that you think, or why you believe what you believe. And here in this story, Elijah has great courage, and he really stands up for what he believes. And he really believes that his faith is very strong, and he believes that God is with him and God will not leave him. And I hope I have that same kind of faith whenever I face hard times, whenever I feel like I have no support, or whenever I feel like my friends don't quite understand me, or my coworkers, or whatever, and they don't agree with me. But I I can trust that God is with me, and in the end I will try to do what I believe God wants me to do. In the end I will try to be faithful and live faithfully because I know that God is still there. And it's even though excuse me. And even though Elijah was the only prophet of Baal, or Elijah was the only prophet of God left, there was 450 prophets of Baal, but he believed God being on his side meant much more than than the numbers. And I think that still is the case for us. We need to believe that when God is with us, God being on our side means so much more. So we need to remember that this week.